Good morning, friends, and thank you for tuning in and supporting another shorty episode of 10 Minutes with Tammy, where we focus on all things for parents of children, teens, and young adults with special needs. From quick and helpful actionable tips, strategies, and tools to transparently talking about our trials and definitely celebrating our triumphs. If you think that this podcast could be helpful for anyone in your network or your community, please share it out. Now, for those of you who may not know me, my name is Tammy Flynn, and I am your special needs advocate and educator, and the host and producer of the On Air Advocate podcast and broadcast. And as the title of this episode says, I am here this morning to discuss transitioning, going from entitlement services to eligibility services. And you are probably sitting here listening right now going, what the heck are you talking about, Tammy? Entitlement services, eligibility services? I don't know if I've ever heard it said like that before. But what I wanted to make sure of is before we kick off our transition series, which I'm super excited about, which is coming this Friday, I wanted to make sure that you guys had an understanding of the difference and why it's so important that even if your kiddo is in fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, having a good understanding that you are in the space of being in entitlement services versus those eligibility services is golden. If I could take and extract one thing that I learned way too late that I would share with every parent right now screaming from the rooftops, is to fully understand that when we are transitioning out of that high school setting and beyond and into our adulthood years, that programming and systems are completely different. Regulations, guidelines, laws, everything that is followed is completely different. And all of the things that all of us special needs parents have gotten accustomed to over the last 21 years of knowing how to advocate, knowing how the system works, knowing what the expectations are, knowing where we have all of our rights, every IEP we get, all the rights that we have, completely and totally 100% change. And so understanding that, if I would have understood that years ago, I would have definitely been jumping on and looking into that future planning much earlier than I did. Because as you can imagine, if all of these things change and supports change that you naturally have right now, right? That might look as us as parents as well, that our jobs and the things that we do might inevitably need to change. So let me break this down for you guys real quick. So entitlement services are what we have going from the Birth to 3 program all the way through the extended high school years, when our kiddos can stay until, I think is their 21st birthday, ending before the school year, after the school year, whatever that date is. So through that whole entire period of time, it is called that we have entitlement services, meaning that we have things granted to us, we have laws to protect us, we have systems to follow, and that we cannot be denied for those things. So if your child meets whatever type of baseline criteria for the Birth to 3 program, obviously they are a part of that. But then if they meet any of the different learning areas of need, they are eligible for an IEP. And always, no matter what the situation is, they always are taken and integrated into the school system, right? So that is something that when my son was in school, I know that so many parents get upset about IEPs and they get upset about what happens in the school systems a lot of times and how things are followed. But just know that while you are in that birth to 21 years of age range, you are in your golden years. And so, don't want to go into that, too much on this podcast, but just letting you know that is where you are entitled to these services. Once your young adult bridges out of the high school setting at the age of 21, they move to eligibility services, meaning that when we look at employment opportunities, right? When we look at different college and life college opportunities, when we look at them following their purpose through whether that be volunteer work, meaningful work to them, the kind of some passion projects, those kinds of things, as well as their medical transition that goes along with this whole process. So many things fall upon where they're eligible for. So when we look at like life colleges, there is eligibility requirements that go along with that. You just can't say, okay, well, I want Bobby or Susie, I want them to go to the life college every day. I want them enrolled and I'm going to pay for it. And this is what's going to happen. That is not a thing anymore, because you still have to be eligible for those things. The same thing with employment. You make it an opportunity to shadow, but that does not mean that any employer has to take you on if you do not meet their criteria and their guidelines. So things transition so much that what I would say is that if you are in the space right now, being in those entitlement services, you are in that elementary, high school years, that these types of resources, when we're having like a transition series on high school and beyond, is to start listening in to what's out there. Start listening in to the folks that I'm interviewing that have amazing life college programs, but what is that criteria that you must meet to be able to attend that type of schooling? If it is job shadowing, opportunities that way, or whether it is employment, what those employers are looking for. Because what I can tell you is that's very much widespread, different across the board. So I would encourage you that even in this, if you're in the entitlement phase still and you're receiving those services from your school system, know that that is great. I would cherish them differently now. Like if I had to go back through the process, I definitely would cherish them more than I did in those early years. Because I felt in those early years, right? We always want to find things that are like, this isn't right, and this isn't right, and this isn't right. Well, when you bridge and you bridge out of high school, then you're not arguing anything with the whole game has changed. The whole game has changed. And I'm not going to take more than 10 minutes today, so we can discuss that whole game change at a different time. But what I wanted to make you guys aware of is why it is so important to tune in to something like a transition series and listening to what other young adults themselves have done, different job opportunities they found, listening in from different employers that are available, also listening into some of these different life college programs and programs like work to job programs through colleges and stuff as well, through some of the community colleges. So I think it's really important as a special needs parent that, knowledge is power, right? And so the more that we can know ahead of time, the more we can, set up our young adults for success, right? As well as we can set our families up for success. Because as you can imagine, if your young adult graduates and there is nowhere for them to go 8 hours a day, and you have to work away from the home, and let's say you're a single parent, well, what are your options going to be? And so there are so many of us in the space now, years later, that wish that, oh, I wish I would have known. I heard about all these programs and all these things. And for whatever reason, I thought it was the way that it was then, right? I heard it was a little different, but I still see all these programs and services and colleges and places out here. Like we have enough opportunities, and then realizing that those opportunities all have an eligibility tag attached to them, that makes you really kind of rethink the process of what is going to be not only the next steps for my young adult, but what is going to be the next steps for our family. So I just wanted to share that with you guys this morning. I know I was talking really fast, but make sure, kicking off Friday, that you are following us on one of our social media platforms, not fat forms, platforms, and or you're following the podcast itself, so that when we go live, if you guys want to actually catch the broadcast itself, so if they're going through things, you can see that visually. Make sure that you're logged onto something that you're going to get alerted for the different episodes, because I believe within the week we have about 20 episodes that are going to be going live. So I don't want you guys to miss anything you want to see, but know that if you do miss something, you definitely can catch it on YouTube and whatnot later. So with that, I don't know, I probably went over my 10 minutes, so I'm gonna make this fast, and I'm just gonna say I want to wish you guys all a very, very blessed and wonderful Monday. I hope you guys have an amazing, amazing, amazing start to your week. And until next time, bye-bye, everyone.